Okay, we're live. So thank you, Richard, for joining me today. The purpose of this interview is to talk about AFAR and your experience during the pandemic.
Mhm.
Uh, so I think what we'll start with is how would you describe, really the pandemic seems it just keeps sort of evolving and shifting, but kind of
Yeah.
going back to the beginning, what was that experience like for you personally and professionally?
For me, it wasn't as drastic as a lot of people. I am social by nature of the job, but I have no problem being inside practicing my instrument all day. I'm a piano player and reading and working out. So for me, it wasn't as drastic as some of my friends. So for me, I looked at it as an opportunity to do a lot of things that I just haven't been able to do because I'm flying around doing concerts, teaching at universities, workshops, clinics. So I'm spending predominantly 32 hours a week just traveling, planes, trains, cars, which is a lot of time. So for me, as soon as it happened, I was like, okay, I have to make the best of this, whatever I decide to do.
Yeah. And can you give me a little background on the record label?
Yeah, Farm Music. I actually started it in 2003. I was the director of the National Basketball Association for the Atlanta Hawks, Atlantic Spirit. And I had a hip hop group, and we played all the music for all the games at the basketball games. So I got to meet all the famous players, eat dinner with them, lunch with them, because I had all access pass. So I started it for that. And the idea was to bring different people together, jazz and hip hop, and start getting the music out to kids in schools, education, high schools, middle schools, because there wasn't a lot of live instrument playing. A lot of stuff is produced nowadays, meaning sounds that are produced from a computer, not a live instrument. So my goal was to create a company that was actually a band of instruments, of people going into schools presenting this music of jazz via hip hop. So the kids, we would play a song they would know, but then we would quickly transition into a jazz tune and they'd be like, oh, wow. So that's how it got started. And then we did that for several years and I started traveling, doing a bunch of stuff. And then once I moved to Chicago, I decided to reignite it again. I always had it. I just had more time to spend with it. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And then it kind of grew into this recording of doing different jazz projects. So that was the infancy of it. And then during the pandemic, I decided, well, I'm just going to build my own jazz studio. Why keep paying to go to these studios when I can just build it myself? So I just asked my dad to help me. We said, yeah, we ain't got nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, yeah, we do that. And then I said, I'm gonna open it up to the public. Eventually, at the time I couldn't, but I said at some point, people will be able to use this, whether it's friends or just people of high quality music, and make it free. And then hopefully they can put out all their music that they've been writing during the pandemic. So that's kind of the general overview of how it got started to where it's at now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So after you built the studio with your dad, uh, how did you start to put together who would come in, or how did you get the word out? Like, what was sort of the beginning phases of that process?
What I did first is I invited a few guys over who I knew would come and were vaccinated, et cetera, had masks. And I said, hey, let's play a session at my house. Um, Came over, played some tunes. People would always come to the house to play. And then when the pandemic hit, that stopped. And then when things started to seem to get a little bit better, I wanted to try out some of the music I had written. I said, bring your tunes. So they brought tunes and we played them. And then while we were playing, I was figuring out how things would actually work in the studio without being in the studio. And then they would leave, and then I would go to the studio and fix everything and arrange it according to what we did as far as setup, etc. And then eventually, after 2 or 3 times, I invited those same guys back to the studio. And then we started playing and rehearsing in there, and I started trying out several different things sound wise, not so much musically, because we were always doing things musically, but for me, just trying to figure out how's this studio going to actually sound and work. Since I built it with my dad, with schematics from friends I had who were big engineers from all over the planet. So that was more my concern, like taking the information they gave me and being able to put this thing together since I had never done it before.
So how long did it take you to come up with the idea of building it and then actually complete the building process?
The idea of building it was that's nothing, that's an idea. The thing though for me is I'm the kind of person that if I think of something and I decide to do it, then it's action. And most people who
Mm-hmm.
know me, I'm not really oh, I thought about this, I didn't do it. For me, it's either you're gonna do it or you're not gonna do it. One or the other. Let's not mess around because I could be doing something else. So when I said, you know what, I can do this, it, that was it. And then it was just a matter of figuring out, okay, what do I need to build this? Okay, I got to go to Home Depot. I got to get this. I got to call this person. Then it was just like a big math equation, putting it together.
Mm-hmm. So when did the first group come in to play?
Uh, the first guys, it was funny. The first guys came over. It was beginning of November. Yeah, beginning of November, and I didn't have that much. I didn't have that much built and set up. So they were kind of like, oh, okay, he's got this space. We'll play. Then they left and they came back 10 days later, and I had more things. And they're like, oh, okay. I had more mics, I had more stands. And every time I kept realizing what I didn't have, what I need to get. And they would be like, oh, yeah, you'll get it eventually. Take your time. There's no rush. Then they came back about 2 weeks later and they were like, wow, you got a lot more stuff. And then I didn't see those guys for about 4 months, but I had other people starting to come in, trickle 2 guys here, 3 guys here. When the first group came back 4 months later, they walked in and was like, whoa, what has happened here? We thought
Mm-hmm.
this would take like a couple years. I was like, no, I don't have a couple years. I had a new piano, I had all these mic stands, all kind of stuff. So they were more surprised with, okay, this is for real now. And they could hear it when we listened to the playbacks, everything was there. So for me, it was a time issue, but it was a concerted effort of, okay, I can do this if I have 9, 10 hours a day. For me, it's just like, okay, if I do this for 6 days in a row for 2.5 months, I can take it from A to U
Mm-hmm.
and get it pretty much where I need it to be.
So from March, when we shut down, to November, before the first people who kind of started coming in,
Mhm.
what do you think was the biggest challenge for you during that time?
Uh, the, I don't know if I want to call it a challenge. Well, I guess it was a challenge. Trying to figure out the best way to make use of the space that I had. One of the issues with studios is a lot of times the space isn't well used or it's overused. So try to create a place where it's comfortable for people to be in and play. At the same time, make sure that I'm utilizing the space that I have to get the most out of it. The space I have it's fairly big. It's not incredible, but it's good enough to fit, I can fit 8, 9 people in there, depending on what the situation is and instruments, blah, blah, blah. But in doing that, the feeling I've realized from recording, the best recordings are places where people feel comfortable. If they don't feel comfortable because there's a lot of stuff and clutter and all this around, then that affects the music. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was a matter of how can I get the most out of this space, have people feel comfortable, and still get a good sound. So for me, that was something I spent a lot of time thinking about and thinking about other studios I've been in and how they worked and what didn't work. So to me, that was the biggest challenge.
And how about for you on a personal or even artistic level? What were some of the challenges that you were going through during that time, just as like a human?
Artistic level, personally, for me, I welcome the break of having to run around and travel and play all the time. So that was great for
Mm-hmm.
me. You also
Mm-hmm.
have to realize too, I'm a piano player. It's different than like a saxophone player um, or a trumpet player. Like as piano players or a guitar player, harmonically, it's kind of built into us as far as practicing. We're called to do concerts and gigs all the time with just us.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. You rarely ever see just a trumpet player just walking around playing. It's a
Mm-hmm.
trumpet player with bass, drums, piano, guitar, something else. So a lot of times when people ask me how did the pandemic affect me musically, it actually helped because I was able to sit in one place and just focus on what I needed to fix. Like I said, as a piano player, I'm playing the melody, I'm playing the harmony, the bass. We're trained to do that. So me being in
Mm-hmm.
the house is not like I'm missing playing with XYZ. I mean, not that I didn't miss playing with people, but I mean, the skill level of most piano players is okay. I have to be able to sit down and play this tune so people recognize it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit different than a horn player where they've just got the melody. They're not playing everything else. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how about from November to now, almost a year, 3/4 of a year? What has that experience been like for the studio and for the label?
Well, it's been good. I mean, things are reverting back to some kind of normalcy as we thought. I mean, like you said, it keeps going up
Mm-hmm.
and down. It's
Right.
cool for a month, 2 months, and then this new variant comes out and it's not,
Right.
so things were progressing, things are progressing. It's now just a matter of figuring out how to deal with the outside elements and still keep the label and the interest and all these things going and how to maneuver that. That's the trickiest thing. The interest isn't a problem. The music writing isn't an issue. The talent's not an issue. It's just, people's health concerns and is
Mm-hmm.
everyone being safe as much as they can and being honest
Right.
about it. So that's the trickiest thing. But as far as getting stuff done, as far as recordings, I've been putting in work and time, and people see it and they hear about it, and at the clubs and all around the country, people are emailing me, calling, and they're loving it. And they say, "Hey, I wish I could do it. I wish I had the drive and the means, but everybody's different, and I enjoy doing it." So, when I can't do one thing, I figure out something else that I can do, or I'm going to have to do, and do that then, so I'm not
Mm-hmm.
losing time. For me, it's always about um, putting energy and effort in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what do you think you learned most over this process, over the last year and a half?
I've learned that if I've always been very proactive, but I've learned I can even be more proactive if I can get more people on board to get things done. Um, and what I mean by that is it's one thing to say, I'm going to go practice today. That simply involves me. But if I'm going to say, I want to record 30 records with at least 15 different groups, that takes some outside effort and belief in other people who have to say, okay, I believe this can happen and I want to be invested in it. It's not simply me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned, you know, you have to have patience. You have to be able to be willing to work with different people, which is not new, but the bigger the scale the project is and the more you're vested in it, you know, the different directions it can go at any time. It's one thing when you're working for somebody else and you're
Mm-hmm.
part of the team. It's a different thing when you're in front of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's okay though. It's good. I like it, you know, because to me it's still a group effort. People may look at me, but at the same time, it takes everybody. You know, I need the musicians. I need the engineers. I need my friends who understand how to work Logic and Pro Tools, you know. I need my publicists. I need the writers. I need the interview. I need everybody. It's not just me. It literally takes a team of people to make something happen, whether people realize that or not, is what it is, but it does.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for you and the studio and the label? Where are you headed, or where would you like to be?
Well, the goal is to put out one project a month. I think I can handle that pretty confidently with my touring schedule and teaching. Um, we're on track for that right now. I think we're probably going to be ahead of that. But doing the recordings is not the problem. Scheduling with musicians that's a problem. Because when
Mm-hmm.
you have high talent musicians, getting them all in one place at one time, that is always the hardest thing. Once we get them here, most of the groups, if you talk to any of them, they'll be like, it went really easy. I was
Mm-hmm.
surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Mm-hmm.
let them do their thing. Every now and then I may say, hey, this may have to happen just to make sure that people will listen to it ourselves, or this is too long. But getting them in the same place is difficult. Once we get here, it pretty much runs itself as long as everything's organized with the emails and tunes and all of that. So that's a great thing. So we're on track for that. So I want to just keep that in line and get the word out that people can record for free, and as long as it's at a high level and they know what they're doing, they get a certain amount of time. Um, yeah, and it's for everybody who's serious about the music, and just promoting good quality jazz music and then just letting it grow from there.
Can you talk a little bit about your decision to offer free recording?
Yeah, for me, during the pandemic, everyone was home. Musicians didn't have any gigs.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, my thinking was, well, a lot of my friends are writing a ton of music. When this pandemic ends, they're going to need to record it.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how are they going to record it if they didn't make any money? So,
Right.
so I said, well, I'll just build a studio and just say, you record it. That'll solve that problems. For me, I'm more about being proactive and solving problems. And then if a person decides to say, well, I can't do that, or it's not possible, I mean, there's nothing I can do about that. All I can say is, hey, I've built this, I've helped you do this. This won't be the stumbling block.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was kind of the thinking. It's like everybody's got all this music now, and you see it starting to come out with recordings. People are trying to record and get it all out. So now it's just one of those steps in the process to make things easier for everybody. There's still a lot of other steps you got to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
distribution, publicists, and all this other stuff. But the first step of writing, guys are doing that. Second step is recording. You have access to record it. So, it's one of the things in the process to help get it done.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you want to let people know about, anything that you learned moving forward, or anything about the studio itself, anything else that maybe we didn't touch on that you'd like people to know?
I just like people to know even though people are seeing my face on it, it's a collective effort with everybody who comes in, and suggestions are welcome, constructive criticism. It's not a perfect studio, but I'm willing to take help from anybody who's serious about helping, whether it's financial or information, whatever that is to make it better. Because if the studio makes great music and people put out great music and great product, that will evolve into other great things. And it will kind of build this momentum that will kind of push itself. So yeah, for me, I just like people to know to get involved. If you sit back and look, you can't be one of those people who are haters. You got to get involved, whatever that means for you. Or it's different for different people on different levels. Some people say, I don't play. I say, it's no problem. When I'm at my concerts, I say, players need listeners. If you don't play, you listen. Some people say, I don't do this. And I say, hey, well, maybe you can contribute financially, or maybe you can donate clothes, or, food for the gigs. There's so many things people can do. You just kind of have to think out of the norm that I don't do that. Yeah, you might not do that, but there's probably 20 other things you can do. So let's think about saying what can happen and not what can't happen.
I love it. What a great place to end. And then at the bottom of this article, and if you post this online, I can put this in the chat or in the a link to the studio itself. So if anybody wants to reach out with any of those things that you described, they can click on the link and get in touch. So,
yeah,
thank you so much.
Groovy.